Blood Brothers podcast, a Five Pillars production.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, friends, and the foes out there, and welcome to season 2 of the Blood Brothers podcast with your host, Dilly Hussain. Today's episode, to kick off season 2, we have 3 very special guests. 3 guests that have actually joined us during our COVID-19 series last April and May. The reason why we're having them on today is because there's a huge discussion and debate surrounding the Islamic permissibility, the medical safety of the various COVID-19 vaccines that are out there. And our first guest is a cardiologist from Blackpool Hospital, and that is Dr. Bilal Patel. Dr. Bilal, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Dr. Bilal, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, good.
I remember last time you were on the show, you were quarantining. You weren't exactly in the best of physical state. Do you remember the last episode?
That's right.
You're locked up in one room and you'd been quarantined for about 5, 6, 7 days. But mashallah, you still delivered a solid podcast. How are things with you and your family? Things are well?
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, they're all right. It's been a tricky couple of weeks. A lot of family members have been ill, but alhamdulillah, they're all better now.
May Allah grant them full shifa, inshallah. Yeah. So today's podcast, Dr. Bilal, is about vaccines. And believe it or not, I'm going to try my best to represent the anti-vax community as much as I can, but they'll probably slate me off this episode anyway. But look, we have vaccine rollout policy as we speak. The last number during the time of the recording of this show, 4 million Brits have been given the vaccine, right? But naturally, when the issue of vaccines come up, and like we had with the whole 5G madness and the nature of the pandemic and so forth when it first started, there were lots of conspiracy theories and other things that appear to be genuine concerns. Let me ask you first and foremost, right? How important is it to take the vaccine if you definitely fall within the vulnerable category?
Yeah. So I think if you fall in the vulnerable category, then I think it's really important, particularly now, you know, that we've got this the second wave coming in, and really the numbers now far exceed what we were dealing with earlier on, sort of last year. And so, you know, I'll just give you a bit of perspective. So, you know, when the vaccine came out, I was getting a lot of questions from, you know, family members, community, saying, look, what do you think about the vaccine? Should we take the vaccine? And I had to say, you know, give me a few days and I'll get back to you, because I could have given the typical, you know, straightforward answer saying, well, I'm a doctor and you should have it, full stop. But I went and, you know, I did my research, not only on the science, but on the Islamic perspective as well. And after doing all of that, you know, I came to the conclusion that certainly when you're offered the vaccine, and at the moment, only those being offered the vaccine are those at high risk, vulnerable, and people in sort of high-risk professions. So if you fall under them categories, my advice has been to those groups of people that you should go and take the vaccine. And that's after really, you know, looking quite deeply at the science and from the Islamic perspective as well.
Okay, so before I pick your brains a little bit about what you found in terms of Islamic research, let me just posit the following to you, right? From your knowledge, Dr. Bilal, how long does a vaccine generally take from the process of research, putting it together? Sorry, I don't know what the medical terms are, so you're going to have to forgive me for that. How long does it usually take? I'm sure it doesn't take 6 months. What's the usual process for a vaccine to come out?
Yes, so normally you're looking at a few years, you know. I mean, normally it's going to be around 5 to 10 years for a vaccine to come onto the market.
Yeah. So those who have stated how quick the vaccines have been made, would you regard that as a genuine concern?
Yeah, so I think, you know, we've got to be honest that there are a lot of genuine concerns with the vaccine, and hence I think it's really important to actually tackle these concerns head on. I think it is a genuine concern because normally it takes so long. The natural question people are going to ask is, well, how come all of a sudden, you know, these vaccines have come out in the space of 12 months where normally it takes years? And I can answer that question for you.
Go for it. Let's hear it.
So at the moment, you know, we are dealing, and you hear this term all the time, unprecedented situation or unprecedented times, where you've got a global pandemic which has really affected the whole globe. And when you've got a crisis that large, what we found is that the collaboration between, countries, groups, scientists has been far bigger than anything before. Just to give you a bit of insight, so, if I wanted to do a research project on a new drug or something, it would take me months, if not at least a year, to get authorization to even start the first part of the study, which would be the phase 1 part of the trial. And normally you have a phase 1 trial, phase 2, and then phase 3, which is a larger trial. And then you will publish that data, and then you apply for FDA or MHRA approval. So there's a long process. So first of all, with this pandemic, what's happened is that a lot of bureaucracy and red tape has been taken away. So normally any research you want to do, the first hurdle you come to is the red tape, which takes a long, long time. And what's happened is for research on the vaccine, that's been taken away altogether. So people have had approval to start the studies very quickly. Secondly, the phase 1, 2 and 3 trials are normally done. You do phase 1, then you wait, you look at the data, you do phase 2 and you look, and then you do phase 3. So this whole process takes several months, if not years. And here, they've all been done simultaneously as well.
Dr. Bilal, if I can interject then, isn't it a case then when the bureaucracy and the red tape has been removed, when countries are collaborating more so than they would in a normal situation, isn't there now a more greater exposure and vulnerability to oversights and mistakes in getting the vaccine right?
So what we have to understand is that when you do research and when you're doing, large-scale studies, which we're doing and have been done, normally when you develop a drug, you might test it on a few thousand people. For the vaccines, it's been tested, in the studies, there's 70,000 people, which is far greater than any other drug that you've had. Also, if anything, your scrutiny is far greater because this is something that you're going to roll out worldwide on a mass scale as well. And, the MHRA, which is the body that we have in the UK, is very stringent in looking at safety and regulation as well. So on the one hand, yes, it has come very quickly. On the other hand, there is a very large level of scrutiny, not only on the studies, but also on the ongoing patients that have had it. So, so to date, 17.5 million people globally had the vaccine. And this was, at the end of the first week of January. And all that, there's very close monitoring for safety, very close monitoring for side effects, very close monitoring throughout.
Let me ask you something, Dr. Bilal. Look, I don't mean to cause any disrespect to you or our guests that are going to come after you, but isn't the kind of response that you've just given to me expected from someone who works within the NHS field? So basically, in colloquial terms, you are an establishment man. You would say this. You're in this industry. They pay your salary. So it's your fayda to push for the vaccine, as will Dr. Siema, who's going to come after you, and as will Dr. Abdul Wahid after you. You guys are doctors, so you're going to say this, surely.
Yeah, so I love your question there, So first of all, and I think, you got to understand, so from my perspective, I'm not somebody who the vaccine comes and said, yes, give it to me, I'm going to have it. Because I wanted to do my own research first for the exact reason that you've said. Because a lot of people are going to come and ask me, and they're going to say to me, Dr. Bilal, you've only taken it because you're part of the establishment. And I wanted to be able to give them an answer, saying, well, actually, that's not the case, because I myself had my own doubts. I've gone and looked into that, and this is the conclusion that I've then come to.
What were those doubts? What were those doubts, if you don't mind me asking? What were some of those early doubts? What were some of those early doubts that you had?
Yeah, so the early doubts were exactly as you said, a vaccine normally takes years to come, and it's come out all of a sudden. The follow-up period, for the studies is relatively short. How do you know what the long-term effects are like? Can we trust the big pharmaceutical companies? All these things which general public have got, although we're part of the establishment, the medical profession, but at the same time, when I answer somebody, I've got to be honest in my answers, and so after looking at these in great detail, there are some concerns, but overall, I'm able to answer them, when people question me now. And there is fayda in it. Of course there's fayda in it for me, because if more people get vaccinated, it means that, you know, our hospitals are not going to be overflowing. We're going to have less people. We're going to have to say, we're sorry your loved ones have passed away. We're going to have less trouble within our own communities. So that's my personal faida that I've got. No doubt there's a personal benefit in this. There's no financial benefit for me. I think you've got a couple of GPs coming on afterwards and you could ask them, you know, that the rumours on the streets are they're making lots of money out of this. But I'll let them answer that question, for you. Yeah.
So what has your Islamic research told you in terms of the permissibility of the vaccine? Because the kind of claims that are being circulated, first and foremost, apparently on the NHS official website, or on the gov.uk website, I'm not sure which one, but there is a clause there that says that if you die from the vaccine, you can make a claim up to £200,000. There's also a disclaimer which I read, I don't know which one, whether it was Pfizer or the other one, about that they cannot conclusively tell you whether it'll affect your fertility, right? And there's obviously more wilder claims to do with, oh, it's got pork extracts in it and so forth. What have you found from me? Are any of the things which I've just said to you, is there any truth to any of that?
Okay, so let's start off with the easy ones, okay, in terms of permissibility, in terms of substances. So at the moment in the UK, there's two vaccines. There's the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca vaccine. The Pfizer vaccine is fully synthetic. There's no animal products in it. There's there's no issues with it, full stop, in terms of the Pfizer vaccine. Although some people may say, well, actually, you know, they're genetically modifying you, you know, using that. And actually what this vaccine is it's got a piece of mRNA, which is a code, which goes into your cell. Your cell produces the spike protein, and then your body recognizes this and produces the antibodies. So actually, when you're infected with the virus, your body can fight it. So, you know, that's how it works. And then you've got the other one, which is the Astra one. So there's no animal products in either of the two vaccines. In the Astra vaccine, there is an absolute minimal, and it's 0.002 milligrams of ethanol, which is less than you'd have in a slice of bread or in a banana. Okay, so there's... and many scholars have looked at this and they've given rulings that from an Islamic perspective, it is permissible to take the vaccine.
They have indeed. Across most schools, all schools, Sunni, Shia, generally speaking, the overwhelming push from the ulama in the West and the East has been obviously pro-vaccine, right? But what about stuff pertaining to fertility?
So regarding fertility, so the question from this comes from the fact that the spike protein, which is on the virus, consists of different amino acids, and it's a code. And that there is some similarity in that code with one of the proteins that is on the placenta. So, and I think somebody raised the concern saying, well, you know, this is a conspiracy, a global conspiracy to cause infertility, and this is how they're going to cause it. And
population
then
control.
have, you know, population control over there. So what you have to understand is, though, it's a code. So if you imagine an alphabet and, you know, with 27 letters, you can juggle them letters up in one way or you can juggle them up in another way. And, you know, you've got some of similar letters juggled up in a different way on the protein on the placenta. If this was true, for example, that if you took the vaccine, it would cause infertility, in the same way, getting the COVID infection would also cause infertility. And they've not found any increase in infertility or miscarriage, for that matter, in women who have had COVID infection. And to date, there is no evidence that it causes infertility. The Royal College of Midwives and Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists put a statement out to this effect as well, that there's no evidence to support this. And the other thing to see is that, you know, at this moment in time, people of childbearing age are not going to be asked to come forward for the vaccine unless they fall in the high-risk groups, which realistically is going to be several months down the line. And by that time, with millions and millions of more people being vaccinated, we'll have more information there. Regards your question about, you know, if you look on the NHS website, it says that if you have a problem, we'll give some compensation. And, you know, you're right that the drug companies have got some sort of indemnity. I think what we have to take into consideration is, yes, there is distrust of Big Pharma, and it's understandable why there is with things that have happened in the past. So, we can't just brush that under the carpet. But when it comes to development of vaccines on this mass sort of scale, you're not going to get the pharmaceutical companies coming forward without this. And also the government, in essence, what happens is the government has taken liability, saying if anyone does have long-term problems, they will provide compensation. But this is not something new. This has been there for a long time regarding vaccinations.
Okay, well, so bringing your segment to a close, look, the anti-vax community, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, is becoming increasingly loud and mainstream, especially in the States. In North America, the anti-vax community has within it, as part of the movement, senior medical professionals, very educated professors and so forth, right? How do we distinguish, how are we as Muslims supposed to distinguish between, obviously we know that we have principles of verifying and authenticating news and information. We have principles within our jurisprudence of assessing and weighing up tangible harms and benefits, the importance that we stress on the preservation of life. These are all normative Islamic principles that we have and very much apply in this pandemic situation. But where does a Muslim's critical thinking fall between genuine concerns raised by the anti-vax community and wild conspiracy theories, which quite frankly cannot be substantiated in any shape or form? What would your advice be to Muslims who find themselves in this pickle?
I think, I'd go back to the principles, that we have. And, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala advises us, in Surah Nahl, the Bee, saying, if you don't know, go to those who have knowledge. And the advice for the general community is that, if you want to know about the knowledge, it's no point getting the knowledge from a WhatsApp circulated by, several times. We have no idea. We have people within our communities. We've got scholars who have got good medical background. A lot of work has gone on amongst the physicians and the ulama as well. The British Islamic Medical Association has come up with 2 documents on both of the vaccines, going through these concerns, that people have. So I would go to those who know. Secondly, the other thing is, do not become a part of spreading the false, this sort of conspiracies. Because at the end of the day, when a piece of information comes to you, you have to, again, looking with Islamic principles, you've got to verify the information before spreading it on. Otherwise, you'll become a part of the fitna. And then as a consequence of your actions, you're going to have households or families or people in the community saying, well, I've read this and I've seen this. Now my mum or my dad who was going to go for the vaccine is now worried and they're vulnerable and now they're not going to go for it. And I think it's really important that one, we verify the knowledge. 2, we go to those people who have the knowledge, and these people who also have the Islamic knowledge as well, before coming to a conclusion. Now, I'm not saying to everybody, look, blindly just go and take the vaccine. What I'm saying is that at least do your research. Don't fall for the all the conspiracy theories that are out there, and come to your conclusion. However, do not be putting people off who are at risk and vulnerable, because at this moment in time, the people that are being offered the vaccine are those who are at the greatest risk and the vulnerable. And often what you'll find is the people that are spreading the rumours are those that are not at risk. This is the the youngsters. So even if they were to get COVID, most of the time they'd be all right. The ones that are suffering are the most vulnerable in our community. And we've just seen over the last 6 weeks, I have to say, I was not expecting what we're seeing today, in the hospital, in our communities. I thought by November, the Northwest had the worst of it. And now what we're seeing, the number of janazas going on, cemeteries being filled up.
Incomparable to last March, April, May?
Yeah, we're in a far worse situation to last, April, May. If you remember, I put the video out around that time for the fear of actually what is going on the ground now. And now we're seeing real devastation amongst communities. I'm seeing WhatsApp videos passed around about, oh, look, these hospitals are empty. And I, advise anybody spreading these messages, first come to intensive care, have a look. You won't be able to go in because of the restrictions, but, anyone who works there, speak to them and they'll tell you the situation on the ground.
Dr. Bilal, thank you very much. Jazakumullah khair for your time. It was great having you on. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you and your family, keep you safe in these testing times. And we look forward to having you on again in the near future outside of this situation, inshallah.
Thank you very much.
And I'm also very confident that you'll give me a good run for my money in an arm wrestle. I just got a feeling. Yeah. Your frame tells me that. And your smile, your smile tells me that as well. It was great having you on. Take care. Keep us in your du'as.
Jazakallah. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
For our next guest, we have someone else who had great honor in joining us during the COVID-19 series. Someone who is very active in the Muslim activism scene, especially in the north of the country, but who also happens to be a GP and whose contributions and advice in the previous episode she featured in was of great benefit. And that's none other than Dr. Siema Iqbal from Manchester. Assalamualaikum, Siema, how are you?
Walaikum salam, Dilly. I'm good, thank you.
I feel so guilty about getting you onto the show, knowing that you're so overworked and how much you've been consumed by the pandemic. Jazakallah khair.
No problem. You've caught me at a time when I'd be doing my cooking right now, but yeah, go on.
What's being cooked today?
Today, boneless chicken salad. Okay. Then I'm doing keema rice. Okay. And I've got some gosht with peppers, but there you go.
And that's after what, having a 5-6 day working week?
It is, but someone has to feed the children. And being a traditional household, my husband can't cook.
Love it.
That's another podcast in itself.
How's work been since the last time we spoke? How's work been?
It's been hectic. It's been quite busy. I think 2021 came and I thought it will be a little bit easier, but then the vaccination rollout happened. And to be honest, trying to organise that, and we work as a group of GP practices to get a vaccination hub set up. It has been very time consuming, especially as you still have patients who the government kind of advises put routine kind of work on hold whilst we're doing the vaccination, but you can't really, because patients have struggled with their problems for a long time now, and they're frustrated as well, and they're frustrated by the delay in being seen by secondary care with their problems ongoing. So we're trying to manage both patient day-to-day problems and also rolling out or being part of the vaccination program as well.
That little mini speech that you just gave there literally was identical to the opening speech that you gave when we spoke last year. I'll tell you what the difference was. Last year, you said to me, look, we still have to prioritize those who have we still have to factor in those who have genuine illnesses against those who are suffering from COVID. But now you're saying it's those who need vaccine against those who have genuine problems, right?
Yeah.
So you seemed pretty exhausted, and you said it yourself, you were tired and you were overworked. That was back in March, April, May. How's it been this time around, comparatively?
I think, when they say you've got to be quite resilient as a doctor, but there are times, where your resilience kind of wavers a little bit. I'm very tired, trying to manage everything, as I think everyone is. And it does take a bit of a toll on your mental health as well, because you're trying to, provide services, be strong for your staff, family, keep everything going. And I think what's upset me a lot recently, I've got to be honest, is when you're trying to do your best for patients, and you're getting, especially around vaccinations, and then you get responses which are brought about by people listening to misinformation and myths. And it's really upsetting, because you feel like you're up against this wall where you're trying to help people and you're getting that back.
So we'll get to the whole kind of misinformation and stuff pertaining to the vaccine. But before I move on to that, right? You've taken the vaccine, of course, yeah? Which one have you taken?
I had the Oxford.
Okay, did you have a choice between the Oxford or the Pfizer? Did you have a choice?
No, well, I would have picked the Pfizer, but because of underlying health issues, I had the Oxford. Both my parents had Pfizer and my husband had Pfizer, so we've had all of them between us.
And is one better than the other?
I wouldn't say one's better than the other. I think they're both very similar. If you look at some of the data about how the efficacy of the vaccines, I think the Pfizer is around 94-95% and the Oxford is around 90%, so there isn't too much of a difference between the two.
Okay, so since you've taken the vaccine, you've not felt yourself mutating or becoming some kind of X-Man or something?
No, I've got to say the Wi-Fi reception in my house is exactly the same, okay? if Bill Gates has microchipped me, he's going to be really disappointed because my life is quite boring at the moment. Okay. But you do, I mean, I've had side effects after the vaccine. That's to be expected,
Like?
you know,
Like?
So I had side effects. I was really boasting the next day that I didn't have side effects. So I had it on a Monday evening. And on Tuesday, I was really proud. I've got no side effects. Told everyone at work how strong I was. And then because I actually wanted the day off from work, I planned not to go to work on Tuesday. So I was really disappointed when I woke up and my arm wasn't sore. But by Tuesday evening, I have to say, I felt rough. You know, I had a temperature, I felt ill, my body was aching, felt really sorry for myself. And it lasted probably around 24 hours. Nothing that paracetamol didn't sort out. So, yeah, but that's to be expected. I think after you have the vaccine, parents had no side effects. Husband, well, he's a man, so, you know, man flu, you know, side effects every time.
It's a real thing, Simon. It's a real thing. It exists.
Dilly, that's a whole other podcast, man flu. We could deal with that in a whole hour. But yeah, you will expect side effects. So I think if you have the vaccine, 24 to 48 hours of side effects is to be expected, and nothing that won't get better with a bit of paracetamol and rest.
So, you know, when you said earlier that you can still get the virus even after the vaccination, right?
Yeah.
Is that the case with all vaccinations? TB,
Well, we have the
meningitis, all of them? All vaccines, how they work?
They don't all work in exactly the same way. So, for example, if we have the polio vaccine, yeah, we don't have polio, do we? We don't have measles, mumps and rubella, but we have the flu vaccine each year, don't we? But we still get the flu, yeah? So we still get milder versions of the illness, and this works in the same way as that.
Okay. Tell me the process. Is it a one-time injection and you're sorted, or is there a process, is there a stage?
No, there's 2 injections for each one. So at the moment in this country, we've got Pfizer, we've got the Oxford vaccine, the AstraZeneca. So both of them are 2 injections, okay? You need to have, at the moment, we're saying that the 2 injections are 12 weeks apart. And I know there's a little bit of debate over the spacing of the Pfizer vaccine, because in trials, they've shown that the spacing should be... Well, the trials were done on a spacing of around 21 days, but the government at the moment, because of the way they want the vaccines rolled out, has increased the gap between the 2 doses to 12 weeks. But I know recently there has been some discussion over, look, we need to bring that gap down to 6 weeks. So I know those discussions are ongoing. So 2 doses. When you have your first injection, so you have the injection and your body mounts a response and you create antibodies to the virus. That way, when you get infected again, then you will have, so you mount antibodies and you also create T cells. Now, the antibodies don't last that long, but the T cells are like memory cells and they last a lot longer. So that when you get infected by the virus itself, you end up kind of activating the T cells, and they know exactly what to do to kind of fight the virus, and therefore you get a milder illness. But you need to have both jabs, okay? So after the first jab of Pfizer, there's a lot of figures floating around about how effective it is, and I've got it's about 52% for the Pfizer after the first jab, and it's around 60, 62, 65% for the Oxford jab. But you need to have the second jab to to make the vaccination work effectively.
Okay, Simon, look, I'm going to posit to you the same question that I asked Dr. Bilal before you, and I'm going to ask Dr. Abdul Wahid straight after. The way you have spoken about the vaccine, its importance, its safety and so forth, wouldn't you essentially say that as a doctor? You are what's regarded as a medical establishment woman, right? You would say this. I wouldn't expect anything different to that.
Listen, right, Dilly, I've had this, you're the voice of the government and all this, okay? If you look at my social media, I'm definitely not a mouthpiece for the government, okay?
Yeah, I know that.
You know that, okay? Right, so it's not like I'm just going to say the government says jump and I go, yes, of course, how high? Let's just do it, okay?
No, but you are part of the medical establishment.
I'm part of the medical establishment. That doesn't mean that I can't take information, critically look at it, and then advise my patients accordingly, okay? Because at the end of the day, I have a duty to my patients to make sure that what I do is to keep them safe and to protect them. When the vaccine came out, I'm going to be honest, I was a little bit hesitant, okay? I discussed it with my husband and I was like, look, I need to do more reading around it. I'm a little bit hesitant myself to get the vaccine. And that's me as a medical person, okay?
Because of how quick it came out? Was that one of your main concerns?
Yeah, I think it was a couple of things, you know, new technology, how quickly it came out. I hadn't read the trials. I didn't understand about why the trials were done so quickly. So I went away and I did some reading, and I think this is where you've got to make an informed decision, but you've got to make sure the information is coming from trusted sources, not random WhatsApp messages. So I did my reading, and from my understanding of what I've read so far, I feel that at this moment in time, the safest and the best thing to do is have the vaccine. I don't know what the side effects of this vaccine are in 10 years. I don't think anyone knows what the side effects are in 10 years. We don't have that information yet. The vaccine's not been around long enough, okay? But I do know, because I see what COVID is doing and the fact that it's killing so many people, it can randomly, you know, affect people of different ages. You just don't know who it's going to affect. And I'm starting to see the long-term effects of COVID, okay? So we're already seeing that. So based on that information and from what I've read, I would say at this very moment in time, the vaccine is safe. I understand that how it's been rolled out, how the trials have been done, and safety has been taken into consideration. I would say get the vaccine. It might be in a year or two, the information is very different. Yeah, I can't tell. I can only go off what I know right now. And right now, as a doctor, as just not even a doctor, just as a person, I would say that I think it's safe to have the vaccine.
In terms of your research, there's been various concerns that have been raised by Muslims and non-Muslims, but one specifically that's been raised is that any effects that it can have on fertility. Have you looked into this?
I've had a look a little bit into that because I've had patients. What we have is we have guidance given by the government, and there have been trials, and a few of my colleagues have looked at this as well, you know, particularly those that want children in the future. And at the moment, there's no evidence to say, look, you know, it's going to have any impact on fertility. So they're saying that if you're pregnant, not to have the vaccine unless you're at high risk of getting COVID and the benefits of having the vaccine over being pregnant, etc. And they're saying that as soon as your pregnancy is finished, you can have the vaccination. But in terms of fertility, I haven't read anything concrete, to say, look, don't have this if you're planning on having children.
Bring your segment to a close. At the time of the recording of this podcast, we're on Sunday, the 24th of January. If I'm correct, there's been 4 million that have taken the vaccine?
Yeah, just over 4 million, yeah.
Yeah. So what's your general thoughts on the UK government's policy, their rollout policy of the vaccine?
Yeah, just to be clear, Dilly, right, 4,000 people have had the jab. 4 million, just over 4 million have had the jabs, okay? It doesn't mean they're vaccinated, because they've not had both doses.
So 4 million have had the first injection.
First injection, yeah. I think the figures, you need to check the government website, but I think the figures of those that have had both doses is around 400,000, okay?
Yeah.
So when we say 4 million, we need to be clear, 4 million people have had their first doses, so they're not fully protected. So, in terms of rollout, you asked me about rollout, I can understand why, because of the storage of the Pfizer vaccine, I understand why we had to do it as big hubs, we had to work together as a hub, the delivery gets dropped at the hub, and patients from a group of GP practices go along to the hub to get vaccinated. We're only doing the over 70s and high risk at the moment. Now the Oxford vaccine is available, I very much feel that they should be given to pharmacies and to GP practices. So like we do with the flu, we should be able to vaccinate our own patients. I think
time to make lots of money.
No. Look, right, someone asked me this question and as much as I would love to drive a Lambo, I don't, okay, right? And I think the Times wrote something about GPs are set to make millions from this. I'd love to meet that GP, okay? We're not. Dilly, it's £12 per vaccine, okay? £12, that covers all your staffing costs. There is zero money to be made, 100% zero money. In fact, I know of primary care networks that are in a loss, that are just covering the costs themselves, okay? And GPs and pharmacists, they're actually working in their spare time just as volunteers to vaccinate. So there really is no money to be made in this, okay? Really, there isn't.
Yeah, we can talk about that in a year. If you drop a Lambo or a Rari, we can then...
Yeah, if I'm driving a Lambo Auris, right, in a year, you can come back to me and I'll come back on.
Okay, but look, in terms of do you think there's anything that the UK government could have done better in terms of its rollout policy?
I think they should have rolled out the vaccinations a lot faster. They should have probably let, as soon as the Oxford vaccine came out, let pharmacists and GPs just start rolling it out. I think giving us a bit more autonomy, because we do this every year. We do the flu jab every year. We know how to do it, and just let us get on with it. But I think there have been a lot of kind of tied your hands in a lot of ways in the contracts that we've signed. I think we could have, if we'd just been allowed to just get on and do it without all the red tape, potentially we could have rolled it out a lot faster. Siema,
it was an absolute pleasure having you on. Rest up. Actually, no, you can't rest up. You're making food.
I'm going to go start cooking now. You get changed and start cooking.
You got ghost and chicken and stuff to make.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
But look, listen, may Allah protect you, protect your family, keep safe. And
you.
And I look forward to having you on again in the future, outside of the pandemic, inshallah.
Yeah, I look forward to the man flu podcast.
Okay, yeah, but we can't have a woman talking about the man flu. That's a subjective perspective. You're going to be biased.
No. I'm gonna do it with my doctor hat on. It'll be fine.
Okay, man flu. Listeners, viewers, man flu is real. Yeah, it's real.
Take care, Dilly.
Take care, Siema. Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum salam.
And last but not least, we have another guest who we had great pleasure in having on last year during the COVID series. He's a dear brother of mine, a friend, an advisor, a mentor, and that's none other than GP and also the chairman of Hizb ut-Tahrir UK, Dr. Abdul Wahid. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dilly, how are you?
I'm well. Was the big up introduction good enough?
Not really. No,
okay,
it doesn't matter.
Okay, fine. There'll have to be a third take. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, akhi. How are you?
I'm well, alhamdulillah. I'm well. You keeping well? Work busy? Family okay?
It's busy. Alhamdulillah, family's all okay, mashallah. It's busy because work is busy. I didn't feel in the first lockdown that life changed for me a lot in terms of work-wise, because obviously I can't really work from home as a doctor. But it is very busy at the moment. It feels it, to be honest, mashallah. Alhamdulillah.
So like those who came on before you, Dr. Simon, Dr. Bilal, they all said that comparatively it's significantly more busier in terms of workload, in terms of what they're seeing. So I'm assuming the same for you, right?
Yes, I think there's a few reasons. We're in winter rather than spring and summer, and we've got all the people with all the winter illnesses as well. And in the first wave, when the government said to lock down originally, people really just buried themselves at home. Even people with legitimate medical problems didn't come. And we were all a bit surprised by that. We were expecting, so we were expecting some work to carry on, but people didn't show up. And by the end of 9 months or a year, people aren't willing to go through that again. So people are, despite the fact that they've been told the NHS is on a limited service at the moment, people are still coming with their problems, because they're problems and they want help. So there's a limit to how much you can postpone at the moment. So it does feel very busy. And what the thing now, the reason why it's so important is that most GP practices are trying to free up as much time so that staff, doctors, nurses, others can contribute to the local vaccination programs that are going on. So it is busy, but mashallah, I don't like to complain, because alhamdulillah, I'm fortunate. I have work. I'm in a job. I'm not one of those people who has lost their job. Alhamdulillah, no one in my immediate family has been ill. We've lost some dear family overseas to COVID. Some very elderly uncles of mine have passed away through the COVID. Allah give them rahmah. But alhamdulillah, everyone here has been well and healthy, and I pray you and your family and all the brothers and sisters watching have been safe in Allah's protection.
Inshallah, Ameen. You've taken the vaccine or the first jab?
I've had both, actually. I've had both. Yes, okay. Yes. In my neighborhood, they decided anyone they had done the first one for, rather than reorganizing the schedule, they would go ahead and give the second one, and then any new ones after that, they'd follow the local guidelines on that.
And
So
are
I've
you
had both.
okay? Are you feeling 20, 30 years younger? Or any superpowers emerging or anything?
Definitely not.
Okay.
Definitely not. Definitely not anything significant. You know, a little bit of an achy arm after the second dose, a little bit of a kind of fluey, shivery feeling for 24 hours. But alhamdulillah, nothing more than that. Yeah, that's what most people have had, really.
When you joined us during the first wave, I think it was last April, we briefly spoke about your elderly mother.
Yes, mashallah.
How is Auntie? Is she okay?
Alhamdulillah, she's okay. She's got her first dose scheduled for later this week. Actually,
Okay.
She was a bit reluctant. When I was going for my first dose, she phoned a friend of hers who's a retired doctor who put the fear of the vaccine into her. Who basically said, "Oh, you're not going to have the vaccine made from dead babies." Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was a shock. You know, I got home from my first dose of vaccine. She was like, "Do you know what this vaccine? You know what this vaccine has in it?" I was like, "Come on, are you serious?" I was shocked actually that somebody could.
A retired doctor though.
A retired doctor, yeah. In such kind of emotive terms. I mean, I think we're going to talk about some of these issues, but I think there are legitimate concerns people have, and if you as a viewer have your own concerns, alhamdulillah, this is normal human nature. No, you can't. Nobody is the same on these things. But to start almost like a campaign where you're putting your concerns, ill-informed concerns, in a very emotive and scary way to other people, which can have consequences, is not right. Actually, this is not the correct way according to Islam.
I mean, I think one of the ironies is that you are someone who, part of your dawah and activism, generally speaking, are very consistent in being critical of government policies, right, and governments themselves. But I believe you had a Facebook exchange where there was some accusations were thrown about you, perhaps you and doctors generally who are pushing for the vaccine, to be spokespeople and stooges for the government. And people who know Dr. Abdul Wahid, and government stooge doesn't go well, does it? It's like
it was a shock. I mean, to be honest with you, some of the accusations from brothers and sisters, at first I wasn't sure if they were jokes, and then when I saw the threads, and people's emotions were very high, and one or two people, one brother very sincerely, mashallah, he kind of apologized, and in the end, and actually the thing that apologized, he started making certain kind of almost like accusations that I'm towing a government line, and I just listened to government blindly, and I actually had to respond to him and say, look, you know what, bro, this government, if they had their way with me back in the late 2000s, they would have
killed you with the vaccine.
Literally put people like me in a life sentence in prison for organizing Islamic dawah activity. That was the threat that they were trying to carry back in the late 2000s under their kind of war on terror legislation. So, and I'm, the Hizb ut-Tahrir, the party I'm with, we have a good understanding of capitalism. We have a good understanding of the very dirty and corrupt relationship between corporations and politicians, and the fact that politicians don't in these capitalist states don't primarily put the interests of their citizens first. They put the interests of those with the owners of capital first.
Yeah.
And yet, and I think this makes it very hard. This you can then go from that understanding to very extreme ideas without really good information. It does make a trust problem, doesn't it? That, in the end, that's what it's with anything, any policy in a functioning state, not democratic state, you're talking about any state. In a functioning state, there has to be a degree of trust between the rulers and the ruled. And you've seen that breaking down all over the world. All right. And most dramatically, probably recently in the USA, haven't we? Where, you know, like half the population thinks Joe Biden is a usurper.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the kind of terminology we use in the history of Islam.
Yeah.
But you know the kind of schisms that creates in countries when so there's a massive trust deficit these days, and that's played out with the COVID-19 pandemic.
I mean, before we get into issues pertaining to trust and holding government accountable and so forth, just want to pick on that example that you gave about auntie being told by one of her retired doctor friends that you took the vaccine with dead babies in it.
Yeah.
Look, are Muslims exceptionally prone? Are we like a special group of people who love a good old conspiracy theory? That it was the Jews who had Monday off that planned 9/11, or what we have theories. It wasn't Bin Laden, Al Qaeda behind this, and everything's a false flag, and everything's targeted at the destruction of Islam and Muslims and these kind of things, right? Some of these conspiracies and claims are grounded in a long history of deception and false flag and espionage operations in the Muslim world. We get that. Right, we get that. Yeah. If there's a group of any people in the whole world that should be critical of these things and suspicious, it's the Muslims, right? But are we, because of that reality, are we exceptionally more vulnerable and prone to a good old conspiracy and just circulating it without verifying information? Or are we like any other people, any other groups within society?
I think the short answer is I think we're like any other group in society. I think the long answer is that first of all, conspiracy theory we know it's a pejorative term, isn't it? It's a term used to attack people with ideas that you think are wrong or invalid or extreme, or not founded on any basis. And you and I know that there are many things out there which are called conspiracy theories, which have some basis in, maybe not in truth is too strong always, but they have some valid basis for questioning what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay. So whether it's the whole 9/11 thing, whether it's the issue of vaccines, whether it's even QAnon, which I don't see that's originated from Muslims, that's originated in the US. The QAnon advocates would probably look at Jeffrey Epstein, right? Yeah. And the circle of people and this elite group of people who he circulated amongst, operating outside the norms of law, huge protection from politicians, legal people, and then they piece all. Now, to have that concern and then translate that into, there's a cabal of pedophiles that run the world, it is where you get into the label of conspiracy theory. But the concern may originate in something valid, and often they do, and it's maybe one of the flaws of logical thinking, where your first base premises are slightly out, your conclusions can often be very out, and so I think we aren't more prone. That being said, there are some reasons why we probably. When I say we are like everyone else, but there might be some reasons why Muslims seem to come across more prone to these things. One is our population is generally younger, younger people, more access to social media, less access to mainstream, not less access, but probably less watching mainstream news media. This is one thing, another thing is we have been the subject of a lot of the butt of a lot of conspiracy theories, whether it's
including COVID-19, including its spread.
Yes, COVID-19, the spread, war on terror theories out there, the grooming gang things, Trojan horse. Frankly speaking, we've been the butt of a lot of lies. So. And I think the third thing, it boils down to trust. Actually, some of the data out there suggests that a large number of people, not just Muslims, but from BAME backgrounds, yeah, minority black and minority ethnic backgrounds have less trust in the vaccine than the white UK population. And part of that will be age, no doubt, as I say, but also part of that will be that we have less people who feel they have less to trust the establishment for, generally trust the establishment less. And that therein lies part of the dilemma, I think. So we aren't more prone, but I have to say, some of the Muslims who are affected by the argument get pretty evangelical about it.
Very.
Very.
It nearly becomes a matter for iman and kufr for some of the brothers who've been rolling.
Definitely.
But on the issues of trust in government and transparency and obviously the dirty and murky relationship that governments have with organizations like Big Pharma and so forth, right? Are you now saying that for there to be a level of scrutiny and critical thinking pertaining to the vaccine is justified based on the distrust of government?
Yeah, I mean, and let's just start. Regardless of government, it's a new technology, and a new technology which you're asking healthy people to take, which is in its early days. So, whilst we can say with some degree of confidence, I'm sure your other contributors have already said this, you can say with some degree of confidence when millions of people around the world have taken the new vaccines, the short-term side effects aren't substantially different to other medications and other vaccines. We don't know the long-term effects. So these are legitimate things. So if somebody says to me, I'm not sure, I'd say, well, that's a reasonable thing not to be sure, because we're in the early days of any medicine, any treatment like this, and some of it is new technology. The Pfizer BioNTech vaccine and the Moderna vaccine are actually new vaccine technologies. They're called the mRNA vaccines. And so this is all legitimate. This is all legitimate questions. And the difference for somebody like yourself taking it, young man like you, versus an old man like me, versus an old man's parent, are three different risks from the disease of COVID-19. And so when you balance up, whether or not somebody should take a vaccine where we know the short-term side effects, but we don't know the long-term, well, I'd say for somebody of my mum's generation, for me, it's a no-brainer, actually. I really think we know enough about the short-term effects of a vaccine and the dangers of COVID-19 to somebody of her age group to say, on balance, I would go for it. Yeah.
So you're saying in terms of a kind of on a maslaha calculus, the benefits of taking the COVID-19 outweighs the harm of not taking it, especially if you fall into that vulnerable category.
Absolutely, and this is the same with every medicine, every intervention. You and I, if you in origin, it's haram for you or me to harm ourselves, right? Yep. So for me to just deliberately take a pin and stick it in my arm, there's no basis for that Islamically, to deliberately harm my own body. Of course. So when I ask somebody to stick a pin in me to give me a vaccination or take a blood test, there needs to be a reason for it, okay? Which is valid reason from the Sharia to do something. So I have to look to. So every medicine has a risk. Even paracetamol has a risk versus a benefit. Okay. So this is no different to that. And and we live in a world where too many people think that science is an absolute 100% truth, because Western societies have relied on empirical data and thinking for everything, and they're very, even you follow the mainstream media, they're pretty ignorant when it comes to scientific understanding. The average person in the media here, they've had a fast education in the last year, actually. Yeah. They can't understand why there's not so much certainty around things. So for me, sorry, your question originally was around the concerns, valid concerns. So just on this is the way we should be thinking anyway, all right? If you then add to that in the UK, you've seen a government dealing with this pretty incompetently, right? The way they failed to restrict travel in the first instance, they failed to get a valid test and trace strategy forward. They put their friends in positions of authority over people who are competent. Yeah, the woman who used to run Talk is the one who's running test and trace. Yeah. You know, it's like, you know, why? She's their mate, basically, but they seem to think she's got some credentials for it. You know, the procurement of PPE, complete fiasco, and contracts given to people who've never dealt with this stuff before. And when they deliver, it's not always up to scratch. So you have even more doubts. If you then go beyond that to see what the attitudes of a particular government are towards minority people, black people, Asian people, Muslim people, you've got even more valid concerns. If you then go an understanding of the system and the relationship between politics and business, if you look back over previous examples of where big corporations and politicians have got it massively wrong and there's been serious public harm, these are all valid concerns, Dilly. Nobody can say they're not valid concerns, and they're valid reasons for people to feel less trusting. The problem you have, I think not the problem, the thing you have though is that there is ways, we always in life, we make judgments to the best of our ability, all right? Mm. So when I get in my car, I don't start like immediately trusting Mercedes or Nissan or Toyota or Ford and thinking these people have my interests at heart, yeah? And I don't immediately think they're independent, or the politicians, when they make their regulations about vehicles, that they make them independent of public safety, or with Boeing or Airbus and flights. Yeah, you actually use your best judgment to think, well, is it likely that they cut big corners on flight safety? Right? This government wants to benefit capitalists.
Absolutely.
They know that a lot of disasters in flights will create problems
to the capital and the economy, of course.
For the economy. So it's in their interests of what they look out for to have a degree of regulation. So I may not think they're working in my interests, but I still understand at the end I can probably rely on things to be safe. And it's a similar kind of scenario with this. They this is a capitalist conservative government that is making middle-sized businesses and a fair number of large businesses suffer, and their own economy really, really weaken by doing what they're doing. And really, is it in their interests to try and harm people at this time just to boost the profits of pharmaceutical companies? Of course it's not. Of course it's not. So and out there are many doctors, scientists, statisticians, and just intelligent switched on people who are trying to scrutinize the data the best they can. And they're not linked to a corporation always, and they're not linked to a politician always. And there'll be plenty of Muslim ones amongst them who will be looking and saying, yeah, you know what, on balance, I think there is this particular product. It has some validity. It's got about a reasonable safety profile compared to other things in the short term. We don't know long term. There's a lot of things out there that can help us. And that's what we have to do in the absence of having trust in politicians who really in the end are there to make those decisions for people, really.
Bring our segment to a close and the podcast to a close. I want to ask you a question which I asked you when you joined me last time during the first wave.
Yeah.
And that is, being the chairman of a Jama'ah, of an Islamic party who, let's be frank about, constantly and consistently criticizing Western governments, Western policies, their handling of various issues pertaining to society and its citizens, right?
I'm a chairman of a committee within the party, by the way. So,
okay. Sorry for this.
That's okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So with regards to that, how would you? So currently, the UK government's rolled out 400,000 people have been given they've been vaccinated. They've had the 2 jabs.
Yeah.
4 million have had the single jab.
Yeah.
How would you envisage a hypothetical Islamic government who rules holistically and comprehensively with such a issue of vaccine rollout? And how would they mitigate conspiracies within the state and false rumors? How would you?
So I think a future Khilafah will have to think about this, because actually every state has pandemic on their radar as a significant security risk for them, and they all have it. And it's one reason why you can say the British government really failed massively, and the US, because in their security scenarios,
it's way down at the bottom.
Events, it's there, it's on the list, and there's been a concern about a major flu but Ebola pandemic or a SARS or MERS outbreak for many years. So,
but where do you think it was on the list of risks? It was there. It was there on the risk because when SARS broke out in the Far East, everyone here was on standby that this could come here. So it's a known reality. And just because we're getting through COVID-19, don't think it's gone away. There's nothing to say that next year there couldn't be a serious flu pandemic across the world. Yeah, like of a variety that significantly harms. So every state has a duty to do that, and the Khilafah would be no different. I think where we hope things would be different is the degree of trust between the ruler and the rule would be different to what it is in these states here, and the degree of cooperation between the citizens and the state would not be quite the same it is in these secular liberal societies, where there is a large minority of people that don't like being told what to do, and will still have parties and still go celebrating and still go to Durham Castle or whatever, Barnard Castle in Durham and stuff, because they think they're above the rules. So I think those things are important. I think the Khalifa has a responsibility, as we spoke in the last podcast, to deal with pandemics according to Sharia. So there are some Sharia rules in terms of isolating the outbreak zone, so people don't go in, don't go out, separating the sick from the healthy. So it's not about locking down entire societies straight away. It's literally about trying to really identify those who are sick and keeping them away from those who are healthy. And in fact, in the context of COVID-19, I think you would have to have a very, very rigorous testing strategy to identify who's positive but asymptomatic and keep them out of circulation as well. And vaccination comes in as part of it. In Islam, we have rules about health. Seek the treatment. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, all right, it's mandub to seek treatment. And for communicable diseases which affect whole societies, it becomes incumbent on the state to provide vaccination as offer it to people and roll it out. Not dissimilar to what we're seeing, actually. I have to say, of all the criticisms I can have of the British government, in Britain, the vaccine rollout hasn't been that bad, actually. It's been quite surprisingly smooth so far. Would it be mandatory? Allah knows best. I don't think so. Generally, seeking treatment is mandub in Islam. There will be circumstances where a Khalifa, like any government, can make certain things mandatory, wearing seatbelts or these things. I think the threshold on this particular disease and this particular vaccine, there's no state in the world I've seen yet that's made it mandatory. And that's in part because it's what I've said. It's giving healthy people, treatment, which is not yet fully tested, not yet fully understood. And where the disease affects a small number of people very badly, but everybody else not too badly. Okay. I think to make the balance of judgment that you make this compulsory, like some people have suggested in Khilafah, I think is a very poor case if they say that. I don't think that meets the standard that you would get in a Khilafah, because even there's no consensus from experts at the moment to say it should be mandatory. Rather, it should be encouraged.
for people, especially the most vulnerable people. And that's really my view, that we should be encouraging the most vulnerable people. But it's not compulsory for anybody. That's a hard thing to push. So, and the other thing I think Khilafah would have to do, because we, as you know, in Islam, we don't see Islam in the form of a polity as an inward-looking thing. It's an outward-looking thing. Dawah to humanity is something that is at the heart of any Islamic state. So the absence of global leadership, the absence of cooperation, what they call vaccine nationalism, should be absent with an Islamic state in the world, actually. Because these are the issues which require states in the world to work together. And the fact that there's not been discussed, I mean, imagine this, Dilly. In the 2008 financial crisis, all these governments came together to figure out how together, collectively, something that was affecting all of them, they could bail out banks. And yet in the 2020 COVID pandemic,
that collaboration wasn't there. That global collaboration wasn't there.
That global collaboration is just not there. And in fact, it's more than that. It's like countries that have PPE want to keep it for themselves, and they're buying up as much vaccine as they can. And this is not right.
But wouldn't a future Khilafah prioritize the preservation of its own citizens above the others?
You'd have to. But I think you'd recognize in the research and development stages of these things, why aren't we discussing this more? Why aren't we sharing information so we get to a solution quicker? And yes, the Khilafah would have responsibility to manufacture enough vaccine for its own citizens. But I think it would have on its radar how you help, particularly those poorer countries that can't have access to vaccine. And you see this to some extent in how some of these other states, with their own motivations of trying to influence other countries. China, for example, is providing vaccines to other countries. Now, I don't see that as a humanitarian thing. I see that as part of China's global strategy.
Of course, soft power.
Soft power around the world. We have a motivation which comes from وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Yeah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this ummah the just ummah, the middle ummah. So there's an ummah-based role for this ummah in the world. Yeah. لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. And so witnessing over mankind. Now, that's not down to 1 billion plus Muslims to do individually. That needs to be realized by the one you appoint as your Amir.
It's civilizational, that is.
It is civilizational. So, and we know this from the past in various different khulafa, helping countries in famine and these kind of things. It was seen as part of their role, and from an Islamic basis. So, I think that would be something we should think about, and we should understand that comes from Islam, and it's been missing in the world. It's really shocking. It gives you some idea in what a bad state the world is in today, that there's so little cooperation over this global pandemic.
Dr. Abdul Wahid, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. Inshallah, inshallah, we can have you on again, definitely, but outside of this circumstance, inshallah.
Inshallah, Dilly, next time, inshallah, face to face.
Inshallah, definitely. But I am not going to challenge you to an arm wrestle because I think you'll beat me. Sheikh,
you're very kind.
Yeah.
I'd probably cheat.
Now I'm curious as to how you would cheat to win in an arm wrestle.
Very, very easy, bro. Very easy. Are you ticklish?
Okay, stop it now. I'm getting ticklish just the mere thought of it. Abdul Wahid, take care. Convey my salams to your family. May Allah protect you, your family, and your loved ones and the believers. Ameen.
Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Brothers and sisters, friends and foes, I hope you enjoyed the first episode of the Blood Brothers podcast season 2. I just want to thank our guests, Dr. Bilal Patel, Dr. Siema Iqbal, Dr. Abdul Wahid, and all the doctors, Muslim and non-Muslim, who are out there doing a great work, exhausting themselves in the service of the fellow citizens and mankind. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects us all and our loved ones from this virus. Ameen. As it's season 2, you can now find our podcast in our own channel on all the platforms under Blood Brothers Podcast. Like this video, share this video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Blood Brothers Podcast, a 5 Pillars production.